Welcome back. Well, now we are turning attention to another matter. We've got Her Excellency Katrina Lang, the British High Commissioner to Nigeria. She joins us via Zoom. Good morning and thank you for joining us today.
It's a great pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me on.
All right, so talking about this merger between the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and Department for International Development, the DFID, into the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. There are people who are still asking about whether or not it's the right time to reorganize Whitehall. But could you tell us what informs this decision?
Yes, well, there's never probably a great time to do a merger, but we feel that by bringing together our world-class development expertise and our diplomatic network, which is extensive, and for world-class diplomats, we can have more impact in the world. And I think COVID-19 showed us how imperative it is to join up our forces. So as we prepare for hosting the Climate Change Summit in Glasgow in November, and we prepare to take on the G7 presidency, we wanted to be absolutely as ready as possible by bringing together all our tools of government. Okay,
but now that that has happened, I mean, yes, we see that DFID outspends the Foreign Office. I think they say more than about 4 times. And then if you're going to maintain that UN target of spending 0.7% of national income on aid, does this mean that there's going to be a lot less funds for execution of those for the Foreign Commonwealth Office now?
No, so the Foreign Commonwealth Office has always had its own small aid budget, but you're absolutely right. It's been the Department for International Development that has spent the largest proportion of that 0.7 of gross national income, which we are fully committed to. It's in fact enshrined in law. So what will happen now is that the larger part of overseas development assistance will now join up with a proportion that the Foreign Office also already manages, and we'll be able to deploy it more effectively by looking across the totality of our interests to ensure that we've got the right balance. So, for example, in Nigeria, we spend money obviously on humanitarian support, but also on agriculture and on livelihoods, on climate change, supporting Nigeria prepare for climate change. And we'll ensure then that we're getting the very best bang for taxpayers' buck from that money, but also that we're doing the absolute best for Nigeria.
It's taken 52 years to come to this decision now, and one wonders what's going to be new beyond the merger and the functions of the two departments or agencies being merged into one. What is going to be new in the entire approach of this particular office now?
Well, I think the basic practical difference is that we have these two world-class networks, the Department for International Development and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. And we have, of course, worked pretty closely together. The DFID team who work with me and myself have worked closely together. But we're now going to be fully integrated. So there will be absolutely no separation at all between us. So it means that we'll be able to develop a really united, integrated strategy and ensure that the totality of our resources are pulling completely in one direction. So the change will take a little bit of time to work through. I mean, obviously we launched yesterday. We've got a new nameplate, we've got some new titles and so on. But transformation takes time. So it'll be a process of a year and a half, 2 years before all this really beds down and we see the full benefit of integrating development expertise, diplomacy, and making the sum greater than the parts.
Well, reporting line obviously also is adjusted because it's now upscaled to cabinet level, so to speak, different from what existed in the past. Is that going to in any way slow down operations or affect how the different offices now have to work together as one, or it's just going to be the same speed at work?
Well, I think it'll speed things up. So instead of having 2 secretaries of state, we now have 1 foreign secretary, Dominic Raab, who will continue to sit in cabinet and be able to represent the totality of those views. Because to be honest, when you have two departments, there are transactional costs as we try and broker agreements and try and bring our expertise and policy tools together. When we have one system, one team, one united voice, one strategy, one cabinet seat, I actually think it will save time and be more efficient over time. But obviously that takes a little bit of time to bed down as the teams form and establish. So mergers are not straightforward. I'm not saying it's all going to happen overnight. But I, for one, am very enthusiastic about this. I've actually worked both in DFID and in the Foreign Office. In fact, I started my career in DFID, and my last job in DFID was head of DFID Sudan. I then joined the Foreign Office to work in Afghanistan, and I went to Zimbabwe, now here in Nigeria. So I really can see how good these two individual departments are. But my whole career, I've been trying to pull the two departments closer and closer together. So I feel very passionate and very positive about this change. I think it will make it much easier for us to have a very powerful voice, not just in the individual countries we work in, but in our seat on the UN, on the Security Council, on our board in the World Bank and the IMF, and as we prepare, as I mentioned, for hosting the climate summit. Something like climate change can't be solved just through development, expertise and funding. You need to form coalitions, diplomatic coalitions. So we'll be able to bring those two kind of parts of the story together, the amazing development expertise we have and the funding support we can provide, with forming coalitions behind a really strong commitment to what we've signed up to, which is to reach net zero by 2020.
Right. So with this FCDO, as it is known now, I remember when the announcement was made, the purpose was set to ensure that UK's aids are spent in line with UK's priorities overseas. And that was quite specific. And I'm just wondering, so what will those priorities be? Will they be different from what happened in the past, or what?
Well, I think there have been people who've suggested that this is about ensuring that we, for example, just pursue now a narrower definition of national interest around our commercial objectives, for example. I don't see that at all. The word we're using, that the Foreign Secretary has asked us to use, is Britain as a force for good. It's recognising that our national interests are only achieved if countries are stable and are growing. So what we'll be trying to do is, we have a range of interests, obviously. So, for example, in Nigeria, we want Nigeria to prosper economically, but we do want opportunities for British companies. So what we're looking for increasingly is the win-win, how we can achieve both of those objectives. And if there are any tensions in between objectives, we will iron them out, be very open about that, and then pull our totality of our effort behind those. So I don't see things fundamentally changing. I think we'll just be much more explicit now about what the objectives are and how the totality of our tools come behind those.
So this would imply implicitly that it wasn't quite a win-win situation before now. Was it a win-lose or not win as much as you wanted to win situation, if you understand what I mean?
Yeah, I do understand what you mean. I wouldn't say win-lose. I think it was just there was some low-hanging fruits that we were not able to seize on the win-wins because, Department for International Development would have its own business planning cycle, Foreign Office would have its own business planning cycle, and would be allocating resources to their individual objectives. So in the example I gave, Department for International Development obviously focusing on economic prosperity in Nigeria, and the Foreign Office more on creating opportunities for British companies. By explicitly bringing those objectives together, we can design our interventions in a way that do both, so we can achieve the win-win. So I don't think it was actually win-lose before, but there were just opportunities there that we weren't able to seize because we weren't as integrated as we now will be.
So with this integration, what do we expect? I mean, if this office funds maybe an NGO or group carrying out a specific function, is government at the national level supposed to respond, or do they have to specifically look towards creating opportunities for British companies now, or what?
No, it won't be any different. I mean, the other part of this story, of course, and I should have been clear about this, is we're working in absolutely lockstep in a partnership with the government of Nigeria. That's why we're here. So as we join up internally more effectively, the whole purpose of that is to be a more effective partner for the government of Nigeria, to be clear and understand what the government of Nigeria's objectives are, to come behind those as much as we can, and indeed to try and leverage the wider international community, the other big players, the European Union, the United States, the United Nations, so that we're all ideally bringing all our tools together, and we can do our best to support the government of Nigeria. But we'll be very open and transparent about what our interests are. And, all countries have interests. There's no problem with that. And we'll be very clear and straight. We'll be clear what our offers are, and we'll be clear what our asks are in return from the government of Nigeria.
So then, one wonders now, with all of that clear, how is the work of the FCDO going to be different interfacing with development agencies in Nigeria, foreign and local, as well as, of course, NGOs, CSOs, and all of that? Is there any way in which the operations of the FCDO will change in their interface with these development agencies in Nigeria?
Sorry, I lost you for a moment there because my network crashed. Sorry, could you repeat that question?
No problem. Is there any way that the operations or activities of the FCDO going to be different in interfacing with CSOs and other development agencies in Nigeria hitherto?
Yeah, with the civil society. No, I don't see any fundamental change there. So our development experts, the people who were previously in Department for International Development, will continue to engage with the range of fantastic civil society organisations that we work with. But there's some areas actually where that's also a role for the Foreign Office. So take elections, for example, where we're already thinking about preparing our kind of support to Nigeria's next set of elections. And one strand of that will be working with civil society organisations like Yaga, the people who run the Not Too Young to Run campaign, and we'll increasingly be trying to ensure that the support we provide for them is developmentally sound, but also enabling them to do what they do very well, which is run political campaigns. I hope personally this year they'll be campaigning around ensuring more women stand for Parliament. So that's an objective that's very important both to the Foreign Office and to the old DFID. So we'll bring our two sets of expertise behind and ensure we provide support to the right kinds of civil society organisations that can back us and support us in our objectives.
But to a large extent, it would seem like these development agencies, depend on offices like the FCDO largely, as well as a number of other funding agencies like that. Are there plans to help them develop capacity to the point that they can stand on their own, and be able to do a lot of things more independently?
Yeah, absolutely. The whole purpose of the kind of support we provide is exactly that. So whilst we support them in their campaigns, we're also doing campaign support. So for drawing on the kind of expertise we have in terms of how we run campaigns to build their capacity and also their capacity to fundraise. So you're absolutely right. That's one strand of the support we provide. It's to enable them to be more self-sufficient. But to be honest, an organisation like Yaga is incredibly well networked internationally, and I feel we have a lot to learn from them actually in terms of how successful their campaigns are. So it's not always just one-way traffic. We learn from them as well. I think Nigeria is blessed with a really vibrant civil society sector here, doing fantastic work on everything from women's rights to election campaigning, and I think it's a real strength actually of Nigeria. So we will continue to be supporting civil society organisations.
Well, that's cheering to hear that you will keep supporting them, because there was news out, I think about 2-3 years back, that donor agencies were going to cut funding for many of these CSOs. What necessitated that at the time, and since when did it change?
Well, of course, that was, to be honest, before my time. I've been here 2 years. I think there may be a couple of issues there. One is that because we're a very big donor here, in total we spend around £500 million. I mean, it's still small, obviously, in the context of Nigeria's economy, but as a donor, we're very big. That means that it's quite hard for us to engage directly with all civil society organisations. So quite often we work with intermediaries. So we will fund, for example, a UN agency, UNICEF, for example, if it's girls' education and so on, and they will then subcontract to local CSOs on the ground to do the actual work. So if we try to engage directly with all of them, it would be quite difficult. But in terms of the total support we provide, I'm not aware of it going down, but we do have to work slightly differently. In terms of, though, the more political CSOs, these are the ones that the Foreign Office has traditionally engaged with, where we draw on their expertise as much as their ability to deliver programs for us. So, as I say, we do engage with them in a more direct one-on-one basis. But, I'm a big fan of civil society. I think it's really important part of holding government to account, building resilience into the system, into the country, and we will absolutely be continuing to support your strong and vibrant civil society.
No, I think it won't be fair to not raise this point, because that announcement raised a lot of eyebrows, really. A lot of people thought, at a time when the world is trying to grapple with the effects of COVID-19, the economic effects especially, I mean, countries are recording recessions. I mean, economies are not doing well. And, for them, they're thinking with this merger, it might mean that the UK will be focused on spending aid based on maybe diplomatic and security aims. And they say that that's not the definition of what aid should be.
No, you're absolutely right. There's a very clear definition of what official development assistance is, and it is there to support the development of the country that we're working in. And as I said in the beginning, we've got a very clear legal commitment. It's enshrined in our law to spend 0.7 of our gross national income on official development assistance. What I should say, and it may be, I think you might have been referring to this, is that this year, because of COVID, our GNI, our gross national income, has crashed, along with your countries all over the world. We are suffering, and we're going into recession. So the challenge of managing ODA GNI 0.7 means that when the GNI goes down, the ODA also goes down. But that's a temporary factor, obviously related to this particular year. But the 0.7 commitment remains very clear and very strong. And in making some of the cuts we had to make this year, our ministers were absolutely clear that we had to protect the poor, we had to protect our response to COVID, we had to protect girls' education. So the really important development objectives were the priorities that ensured that we retained the ODA. And it's actually things like support around those win-wins I was talking about earlier. That's the kind of stuff we cut, rather than poverty-focused issues. So I think that clearly signals our government is serious. And one other thing I did want to flag is when we announced the formation of FCDO yesterday, the first announcement the Foreign Secretary made was 119 million more money to support humanitarian situation in countries like Yemen, and indeed in countries like northeast Nigeria, whereas there's a really serious kind of humanitarian crisis. So more money is coming in, and we've just announced the appointment of a special envoy to deal with famine prevention and humanitarian affairs. Nick Dyer, who was previously the Permanent Secretary in DFID, is going to be our special envoy. So I think that really does underscore, I hope, how serious we are about putting development as the beating heart. That's what our Prime Minister says, the beating heart of our foreign policy.
Let me see if I could just bring this in. Some people raised concerns about, visa applications that were submitted before lockdown. I mean, what will this conversation be without raising that, right? And for them, a lot of people want to go back to work, rejoin families, and they're wondering what would happen to those applications that were submitted before the lockdown.
Yes, I'm going to apologise for this. I mean, we have faced some big challenges since COVID put restrictions on the visa application centres all over the world, actually. We have reopened the visa application centres both in Abuja and in Lagos, and I did a little video on the student visas specifically yesterday. So we are working through the backlog, but I know people are frustrated and feel that some of their visas have got stuck. We're very aware of that, and we are working through it. So I hope that people will see progress really accelerating in the next few weeks on that. But I do apologise for the delays, and I know how incredibly frustrating that must be, particularly for those who are under pressure to start their courses. For students, by the way, I should say that those who are struggling to also book their travel because of travel restrictions can start their courses online, and indeed many UK students are starting online without having secured what's called the Tier 4 visa. So they won't get behind. They can start, and we have extended the vignettes, the 30-day vignettes, to make them 90 days, so people have a bit more flexibility now as well. So hopefully that will help a little bit to help people adjust to this backlog, but we are working through it.
Okay, now let me bring this in as we wind down. I mean, you must have heard that, the country is working towards community policing. And speaking about capacity development, I know DFID engages a lot with Nigerian police on that one. Now, given the way this step that we're taking about community policing, what is your thinking in terms of, all the work that you put in? DFID now is going to be FCDO. What do you expect moving forward about this?
Yeah, you're right. It's been quite a big focus of DFID's programme, and indeed one of the big successes was the support we provided to the drafting of the policing bill. We are working in particular on policing in northeast Nigeria. We've been rehabilitating police stations to enable police to deploy into what is one of the most challenging parts of northeast Nigeria. We're providing training and capacity support. Most recently, actually, we did a big training program about how to police in a COVID world safely. So it's a very important part of our focus. And you mentioned community policing, and that is an area where the UK has a lot of expertise. And the Inspector General of Police raises with me regularly that he really values the expertise we've provided on that and would like to do more. So yes, that continues to be an important area for us.
All right, then we do thank you for your thoughts this morning, Her Excellency Kashana Lang, British High Commissioner to Nigeria. And hey, that attire looks good on you, actually.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you.